Another one.
What in the world is going on? Hold on. Hold on. Let me fix that. How did that happen? No QA apparently. Let's see. This one. Ah, there we go. All right, cool. We're gonna do that again. You know what? We will build it as we fly it, and we will learn to continue to improve. Right? Let's get to it. Let's do it again.
Another one.
Why they always hating on UI automation? Don't be hating. All right, let's get to this question. Things all over the place now. All right, so I see a lot of hate about UI automation. Saw a lot of LinkedIn posts saying filling up forms, clicking buttons is not real automation check. Instead, put focus on back-end testing. Well, I understand the flakiness and slowness of UI testing and possibly high maintenance, but customers do actions in the UI, right? Besides, why even tool like Playwright promotes lots of UI topics if UI automation is not important at all? Help me shed some light on this one. How do you strive a balance between API and UI, or should UI automation not be adapted at all?
Bruh.
Okay, so let's start a timer on this one, right? I think that the premise, or I think that at the end, so the last question that you asked, right? Let's start with that. Should UI automation not be adapted at all? Of course, UI automation should be adopted. I guess you meant adopted. However, it's what you're asking, the balance between API and UI automation, right? Now, let's start off with this. Why do people say that clicking buttons and filling up forms is not real automation? I've never seen anybody say that. It is quote unquote real automation because you're not manually doing it, but it is on the UI. And as you properly stated, there's a lot of flakiness and slowness that comes with UI testing, and it is very, very high maintenance because as the web engineers, the web developers make changes to the application, it can totally break your UI tests, right? Customers do actions in the UI. However, with proper web development or proper software development, you want to have as little functionality on the UI as possible, as little business logic. When I say functionality, I mean business logic. As little business logic on the UI as possible. All of that business logic should be handled on the API level, right? Tomorrow's presentation on the model view controller is going to be talking about just that. The model layer, which is like your data, the controller, which goes between, it sits in the middle, it's the middleman, has people skills between the view, what you visually see, and I guess visually see is redundant, but whatever, what you see in front of you versus what happens in the background. And the controller sits in the middle between the data and what you see, right? We're gonna break that down tomorrow. But what's important is that you put as many tests on the API level as possible, because on the API level, you can have tons and tons and tons of tests, tons of variations of the test, right? And they should be able to run in minutes, if that long, right? So you can have I remember I was working at a company, right? I put 1,000 different API tests, positive scenarios, negative scenarios, and I had a Excel spreadsheet. Actually, I used a Google sheet, right? But I had a spreadsheet of all the variations of test data, and it would run in like 2 minutes, over 1,000 different tests. If I tried to do that on the UI, it would not be possible.
Do not come.
It would not be possible. So this is why we highly, highly stress API testing. and we say the UI test should be just to test very particular things, right? So that maybe you have one test filling out a form, but you don't put all the different variations of the form. If you can test, let's say you test 2 scenarios of filling out a form, right? That the form can be successfully submitted. And if you were to try to submit a form with invalid data, it would actually return an error from the API, right? That could be 2 scenarios, but you're not going to test every single variation just to make sure that the API error message is coming back to the UI. That's good enough for me. Just to, and then now we're focusing like for the UI test, the web developers should be writing unit tests for the UI, and the backend developers should be writing unit tests for the backend. So look at the testing pyramid. At the very bottom of the testing pyramid is the unit test. And that can be your unit test for the front end, your unit test for the back end. They should run in seconds. You should get fast and immediate feedback from those unit tests. Now, the next layer is going to be your integration tests. And those integration tests include like your API tests, your business logic, right? Just think about it as business logic. All the different variations of the business logic is tested on that layer, right? Next up, we can go into the UI tests, right? The UI automation tests, where you can test like just to make sure like, different things are showing when you like navigating a little bit. You can have an end-to-end test, but it can be like a positive end-to-end test, right? Making sure you can get from point A to point B, and that order, let's say it's an e-commerce, orders are being confirmed, right? That's what you are looking for. And then at the very, very top layer, those are your manual tests. They should be like very, very minimal. It's your exploratory test, right? If you're just looking around. But that is why there is a heavy, heavy emphasis on the API layer and a lot less emphasis on the UI automation, because you don't want all of your tests being done through UI, because they'll never get done. It's going to take like 4 hours to run them, and they're going to always be changing. So it is important to have some UI automation tests, but it cannot be your end all be all. No sirree, Bob. All right. So that's so the balance that you find, all your business logic goes to the API test, and then you have some tests on the UI just to make sure you can get you can get an end-to-end test, a few of those. The most critical paths, those are the ones that you should focus on your UI, but the majority of your tests they need to be based on the business logic, right? And then the unit tests, there should be the most of those written by the software engineers, the backend engineers, and the front end developers, right? With that being said, we're gonna wrap that one up.
Living in this chaos, I can see it clear. People slacking off, I can feel the fear. Trying to make it big, but they just playing games. While I'm busting my ass, they just chasing fame. What's the point of grinding if you don't hold it down? Hear me out, we gotta get it right. No more lazy walks, we gotta reignite. Rise above the noise, push through the pain. Don't let this dream slip, let's break those chains. Got my eyes on the prize, but it's looking real grim. When you ask for the truth, they pretend it's a whim. Success ain't a joke, man, it's blood, sweat, and tears. So why you out here fronting, drowning in your fears? We all want the glory, but do we want the grind? Hear me out, we gotta get it right. No more lazy walks, we gotta reignite. Rise above the noise, push through the pain. Don't let this dream slip, let's break those chains. So step up, don't fall back, let's do what's true. If we really want it, it starts with me and you. Living in this chaos, I can see it clear. People slacking off, I can blood, sweat, and tears. So why you out here fronting, drowning in your fears? We all want the glory, but do we want the grind? We want the glory, but do we want the grind? Yeah. So step up, don't fall back, let's do what's true. If we really want it, it starts with me and you. Yeah. So step up, don't fall back, let's do what's true. If we really want